Hello, everybody. Welcome to Unminding. Tonight, we're without Gem as a speaker. We should have Sir Soul joining me to help out. If not, I'll be on my own, so you will have to bear with me. Tech isn't my strong point. So tonight, we're going to be looking at healing from trauma. It's such a huge subject. We've all had traumas. I mean, I doubt there's anybody that will be listening to this that hasn't had a trauma in their life. It's something that we all experience. It's something that we all experience differently as well. And I would like to say that if you are somebody that is really struggling at the moment, this talk will hopefully help you in some way. But if it is particularly bad, then obviously we always advise for people to get professional help. So we just want to put that disclaimer in there for tonight. And yeah, we're really going to just be taking a deep dive into, what is trauma? Trauma is an experience, obviously, that we don't want to happen, that is stressful, can be frightening or distressing. And as I said, we all experience those, but there's those traumas that stay with some people. There's traumas that psychologically affect people, and they have a lasting effect. They come up in memories, unpredictable emotions, flashbacks. They can strain relationships. Traumas can be really huge. It can really grip some people. And what's really interesting is if you look at trauma, that two people can go through a very, very similar experience of trauma, and one will not have any long-lasting effects and another will. So it's always about what's really going on. That was always really interesting to me, even before I understood the principles, were why do some people get affected and some people don't by life's events? Some people really hold on and become victims of life, and others really bounce back and are really aware of their resilience. And that innate resilience, that well-being that's within them, it's like they already know it's there, and they have that to rely on. And I guess that's what we're pointing to with the principles, is how do we deal with trauma? How can trauma look different under the light of what we teach here? The initial reactions to trauma are obviously going to be fight, flight, freeze. We're all going to have initial reactions to trauma. What we're talking about here is the long-lasting traumas, the ones that seem to stick around for people. When they turn into flashbacks, when it turns into panic attacks, when it turns into disassociation, when it's those experiences that sometimes actually people can manifest them much later. It's not always immediately after the event. Some people can be years later when they start having flashbacks and they start having these emotional reactions to something that happened a long time ago. They can lead to self-blame. But what we know, what we really all know, whether we know the principles or not, is that we cannot change the past. The past is the experience that we had. The past is the experiences that have formed us. That they cannot change. But what we can change through an understanding like the three principles is our relationship to it. Our relationship to what has happened to us. Does it have to define us? I'd also like to just kind of look at why sometimes we stay stuck. Sometimes we stay in these negative psychological states, and it's hard to break free of them because people can actually get comfortable with having, anxiety, depression. When people have had it for so long, it's almost like all they know, and to break free of it, it has to take some sense of courage to actually want to face the thing that they're not looking at that's causing them the trouble. Because really, what you really have to do is kind of look at it with honest eyes, with your with a clear mind, with saying, okay, this is what happened. You cannot be in denial when you face reality. You know, the trauma that happened, it happened. But does it have to carry on? Does it have to have any defining, does it have to have any character in you? Does it have to define you? Does it have to be expressed through you after it's happened? And I know the answer is no, because I know that I've had traumas in my life. I know that I've worked with people that have had extreme trauma, people that have been raped, people that have been in, you know, some have been abused, have been in some really, really dark places. And when they come into the principles, the light comes on. It's like suddenly they see it differently. Suddenly they see that, am I experiencing this trauma or am I experiencing thought? There's only one thing that's ever true. We are experiencing our thinking in the moment. Okay, so what happens is that thought arises, and this energy of thought and this consciousness that we are makes it look so real that it creates the experience as if we were reliving it. Now, the deeper that you understand that that is thought taking form, the easier it is to deal with those moments when old thinking arises, when the past seems to rear its head and it looks so real that it frightens us. You know, it's all that's ever happening, ever, is that we are experiencing our thinking. Okay, it can't be anything else. Whatever it looks like, it's us. We are experiencing life from within. It's coming from us. It's not coming at us. So when we have the event, so we have a trauma. Now, after that event, yeah, of course, there can be some feelings that happen within the first week or the first month that, you know, they're almost like the ripple effect of the initial trauma. But for me, anything that carries on after that is our mind playing tricks on us. It's where the mind is taking us in the wrong direction. It's where the mind has got its grip. And for some reason, the mind likes to have its grip over us. It likes to have some control. And trauma is one of the ways that it can get that. One of the ways that it can get that control. But I want to promise you, it is possible to have a fresh start. It's absolutely possible to see that the only thing that can define us in the moment is really the moment. You know, we are box fresh in the moment, but for the thinking that we carry into it. So anything that you bring into the moment, anything I bring into the moment is what I am bringing. The only truth in the moment right now is us on this call. You know, what I have seen through this work is that how resilient human beings are. It's only when we believe that we're not resilient that we fall into things like having panic attacks, PTSD, being a victim of our past, because we're not seeing clearly what's true. We're not accessing our innate resilience. So we have these two ways. It's like, are we going to look in this direction, access resilience, see its thought, and get over trauma? Or are we going to try and cope? If you think a lot of the therapies and a lot of the things that are out there is helping you to cope with trauma. What I'm saying is that the trauma that you experience, once it's over, isn't real. Okay? It's not true anymore. What you're experiencing is your own mind. Okay? Now, my friend wrote something wonderful, which I really like, which I'll read to you. Her name is Claire Diamond, and she wrote, "The collection of hurts, knocks, trauma, resentments, vigilance, defense mechanisms that form the identity has neither an absolute or a relative truth. The past exists as a construction of this moment. So does the identity. As understanding shifts, as healing happens, the entirety of that old self disappears and it is replaced by a new idea. This is enlightenment. It is the ongoing healing of those shames, fears and insecurities that create the logical, understandable, innocent, but ultimately problematic need to control and defend. Okay? That point in there, the past exists as a construction of the moment. Okay? That's the only way the past can exist. In that moment, your mind is reconstructing it via thought. That's it. It's that simple. And it's that simplicity when seen that leads to insight and leads to healing. Okay? So this is where we have the potential to heal. This is where we have the potential to get over absolutely anything. And I've seen it. I've seen it in front of my eyes with people. I've seen them believe something so deeply about their past and how they're a victim of it and how they'll never be okay, to a light coming on and them seeing that that isn't true, and almost as if all this past has suddenly left them, like the weight, you can feel the weight lift from them. There's this lightness that comes in. You know, it's the healing power of who we are is what's important here. It's not the healing power of what's outside of us. That doesn't exist. It's the healing power that's inside of us. That's what we need to access. That's what we need to be open to. That's what needs to be revealed for these shifts to happen. That's when it disappears. I mean, it literally does not make any sense to me anymore to be a victim of any of the traumas of my past. Yeah, it's illogical. See, that's what it becomes. It becomes illogical. If something doesn't make sense, we don't do it anymore. We talked about this a lot in the addictions episode. Once it doesn't make sense, we stop it. Okay, so once these old traumas don't make sense, they fall away. They're not there anymore. You don't have to manage them. You don't have to cope with them. They're gone. And they're gone because we have new vision. We have new sight. Yeah, it's... Sid Banks said, and I love this quote, if the only thing that people learned was not to be afraid of their own experience, that alone would change the world. Sid Banks is the founder of the Principles. You can look into him. He's passed now, but he was a beautiful man. And he had an insight that developed into these principles that I share and that other teachers around the world share, which is this new paradigm in mental health. You know, it's, you know, to share this understanding, you know, from the point of view of me as a teacher, even for people that see it for themselves, to share it with their friends and point them in the direction of it's thought. It's always thought. It's always where our experience is coming from. That's so much easier to deal with than it being the world, than it being the past, than it being the future, than it being any of the ideas that we have that constrain us. It's none of those things. We are resilient, divine human beings. That, you know, we are having this experience of being alive, and that contains so much. That contains all the good and the bad. But when we can get comfortable with the bad, when we can see it for what it is, when we don't carry it with us for any longer than it's around, then we can move on. So with my recent trauma, I mean, I'm sure most of you know because you follow me, but where I had got burnt and I ended up in hospital, and the event was so traumatic. Even during the event, though, I think I was able to understand that it couldn't have been any other way. This was what was meant to happen. But what was so interesting in my experience was that I was able to observe myself afterwards. So at the time, obviously trauma, all the things that come with that, lots and lots of pain. But what was so interesting was the anxiety, the feelings that came that I had a week later, and then still were there 2 weeks later, but were less. And then 3 weeks later, even less. And now no more. There's nothing there. It was almost as if the initial trauma was like a boulder in the water. And then just afterwards, there was these waves that turned into these ripples that were my experience of the trauma. It was like my system almost had to process what happened. But once it was processed, there was no holding on to it. There's no worrying or thinking about what happened now. It is what happened. It was what was meant to happen. It was my experience. I learnt a lot from it. Now it's over. Now, there was traumas in my past that I didn't know how to let go of because I didn't understand the system. So when we don't understand how we operate, when we don't understand what the human design is, then it's very, very, very difficult to let go because we don't know what that means. We think there's an us that has to let go. We're not understanding the system. We're not understanding thought. With this system, we know there isn't really anything for us to do. It wasn't like I had to consciously decide to not feel traumatized. I now understand the system, so the trauma was just allowed to rise and pass. Now, what was interesting to me was that I actually thought I wouldn't experience any trauma after the event, that actually, there would be no emotion related to it. So it was quite interesting that for a few weeks there were these waves of emotion because it was unexpected. I almost expected the principles to kind of make me bulletproof to it, but it didn't. It didn't make me bulletproof to the feelings, but it gave me a deeper understanding of them. And once they passed, they were gone. Again, back to the logic. Sid Banks used to say psychological, the logic of the psyche. This is what we're looking at here. We're looking at what's true and what's true for everyone on this call and everyone on this planet. We don't have to be a victim of our past anymore. There have been, there was definitely, I think Jack Pransky is one of the old school teachers of the principles that trained with Sid. And he actually did a study that was published, and the principles for realizing resilience in a new view of trauma. And the results were outstanding. The results were wow. To look at people exposed to deep trauma and then put them through the process of understanding the principles was so incredibly effective. Okay, this is what I'm saying about it being true for everyone. And even if you don't see it yet, it is still true for you. You've just yet to realize it. You've yet to realize that these energies are all constantly creating your experience from moment to moment. That is the only thing that's true. That's the only thing that's real. Everything else is part of the illusion of life. Although it's a very, very, very convincing illusion, it's still an illusion. The past doesn't exist and the future doesn't exist. But think about how much time you spend in both when they're not there anymore. There's only the here and now. So presence is another amazing thing for dealing with trauma. So even if you're going through the reverberations of something that's happened, if you can get present, if you can be in the moment, if you can be where your body is, you will be okay. You will come home. Yeah, and the other flip side, which I really like about the principles, is it's also okay not to feel great sometimes. So you will go through something and there will be bad days, but that's part of life. It's not selling this lie of you will be happy all the time, now and forever. That's not life. Life is all of the things. When we can get comfortable with the fact that we're going to go through some tough times and we can go through those times gracefully, that's what we're talking about. That's what we're pointing to. We don't have to pretend. We don't have to cope. We just have to live. I mean, that's something the principles did for me. They got me to live again. I was so lost in my head and so lost in my trauma 10 years ago that, that wasn't on the table. And suddenly these principles came along and I saw the truth of them and I got to live again. So no matter what your trauma is, you have the absolute possibility of getting over it and having a full life. And it's not even that you have to get over it. It just has to be seen differently. It has to be seen from this understanding. When you see it from this understanding, there's actually nothing to get over. It's just something to be seen in a different way. So again, if you're struggling, I really hope this helps. It really does point to something that is a fundamental truth. You cannot change the past, but you can change your relationship to it. These experiences don't have to define who you are forevermore. They can fall away. Now, will that happen overnight? Maybe. Will it take time? Probably. But the more you look in this direction, the more you're open to understanding it, the more you read and look and jump on calls or get a coach, whatever way wisdom shows you, whatever direction you want to go in, it will happen because it's pointing to who you already are. It's pointing to this resilience that's underneath all the bullshit. It's underneath all the things that we tell ourselves that are not true. You are a resilient being. That the nature of who you are is resilience. Now, the human self may not always feel that. The vulnerability of being human. I know when I got burnt, I felt that vulnerability. It did shake me up for a little while, but what I was aware of that underneath that was this resilience of who I really was. That was just having a temporary human experience that was, that shook me up, that caused me to feel a bit frightened at times, that gave me some feelings that I hadn't experienced for a while. But there was a flip side. It also showed me kindness. It showed me love. It kind of, the kindness was something that I hadn't been seeing in the world. It was something that was necessary for me to see. It was something that really humbled me. And if you think about when we go through life's hardships, they're humbling. When things are really good and we get carried away with ourselves, we're not so humble. So there's always pearls of wisdom within these traumatic experiences. It's just when we hold on to them innocently, we're not holding on to anything on purpose. When we innocently hold on to them, that's when they become a problem. That's when it's gone from an experience that's teaching us something to something that's actually really detrimental to our experience. So it's accessing our resilience, which is innate, versus coping. There's such a huge difference there. Absolutely. It's like night and day. Because if you're having to cope, you're kind of automatically saying that you're vulnerable. You're putting barriers up to your resilience. You're not noticing who you are. You're going more in the direction of who you are not. And that can be tricky. It's tricky being caught in the vulnerability, in the ego, in all the in these emotions that really grip us. These emotions that can really, when they appear, when they grab us, when they feel really real, then we get scared of being scared. Yeah, we get scared of our own emotions. That then adds more thinking, which adds more trauma, which adds more feeling. And that's the loop that we get on when we spiral down. But there's a way to cut the loop. And we cut the loop in the moment, in the actual very moment that we see where the experience is coming from, when we see it's coming from us, not from outside of us. That moment of clarity, and we're back in the room and we're present and we're okay. This is why this conversation is so important. Yeah, this is why yeah, Gem and I started this with the help of Cecile. We've started this free space because we know that sharing this, it's like this is the opposite way a boulder in the river. This is the boulder in the water of truth. And so we'll come and we'll chuck the boulder in, and then the ripple effects will be all you guys and what you see and what you share and how it helps you. Because you never know what that's going to be. You never know how many people you're actually going to help by sharing this, by pointing back to show people, don't trust your personal mind. Do not trust thought. There's something deeper in the truth of who you are that is before thought. When you access that, that is your wisdom. That will guide you. That will bring you home to truth. The mind is always making up stories. It's always, the movies, the stories, the gaps that it fills. Think how many gaps your mind fills in a day. Think how many things it makes up, how many times something happens or doesn't happen, and you fill in all the spaces in your mind about what that means, or about that other person, or about what they think of you, or about what's going to happen, or what it means to you, about your survival, about all of these things. And how much of it is untrue? How much is when you actually hear from a person or something works out, and you're like, wow, I really made up that wasn't going to work out. I really made up that person didn't want to speak to me for reason A, B, or C. Actually, it was nothing to do with what my mind said. My mind was just filling the void like it always does. So, start to notice what the mind is doing. Start to be onto the mind. This isn't about analysing content. This isn't about looking at what the mind is saying. This is about seeing what the mind does. Night and day. What's the mind doing? Oh, my mind's doing that thing again. My mind's bullshitting me again. Oh, yeah, that's what it does. When we see that, the content is irrelevant. The content is just noise. Yeah, some thinking's helpful, but, we've said on every call, most isn't. Most thinking is unhelpful. Most thinking is probably causing some kind of illusion, some kind of delusion. And if we can just learn to see it objectively rather than subjectively, we now have the space to be the observer of our experience rather than being completely caught up in it, rather than being a slave to experience. So it's this coming home, looking at these principles, seeing the totality of them, seeing what they mean, seeing who we are, seeing that experience in us reflected in everybody, understanding that we are all these human beings that are having this experience of life via thought, and that we all get caught up from time to time. That includes everybody else, so you can look at others with compassion. You don't know what is going on in someone else's mind. We don't know how lost they are. We don't know how caught up, upset. People don't show always to the world what they're feeling inside. So we can have compassion because we understand the innocence in that. We understand what's really going on. We see that any judgment is unnecessary of others and of the self. If we can drop that, if we can come into our state of being, if we can come to the deeper part of the self, then we're healing, then we're seeing, then we're in truth. That's the exploration. That's what we're pointing to here. It's not out there. It's in you. Yeah, it's in me. It's in you. This truth, this understanding. It's who we are. It's not in the world. That's not where you want to go. You want to come home. And we get so We get so scared of our experience. We can get so scared of what's inside of us because we can believe what the mind says. We can believe the self-judgment, the criticism, the blame that the mind can subject us to about ourselves. And then going in can seem something quite daunting, but it isn't, because with these principles, all of that is blown away. That's not true. They're just clouds that are passing by. It's just thought that has no validity. What's true is who you are inside, is love, is light, is peace. All of that is truth. Now wake up to that and then go out to the world. Then you'll see who you are. Then you'll see the world differently. It all starts with us. It all comes from us. So that's where we want to look. That's what we want to do. This is what this work is. This is what this understanding is. We go within. We wake up. We see the light of who we are. We see these traumas aren't true, ours or anyone else's. We have compassion. We understand. That's the best that we can do. That's the very best that we can do, to go out there, from that place. Not from our ego, not from what we've got or who we know or any of that. Who are you? I love when I'm working with someone that may have had traumatic experiences and then pointing them back to, who were you before it happened? Who was that person? They haven't gone away. We're always fresh. We're always whole. We're always at peace before thought. And all those experiences were before thought. All those things that we think happened to us that have made us a victim are before thought. Before thought is who we really are. Afterthought is what we make up. So who do we want to be? Where do we want to go? What do we want to experience? As soon as you point outside as the problem, you're going in the wrong direction. It's turn that finger around, point back inside. Every answer that you're looking for, everything that you're looking for in the world lies within you. So I was on a course on Saturday, and this guy got up on stage and spoke, and an American guy, and he was saying he had everything. He achieved everything in the world that it was possible to achieve. He'd run billion-dollar companies, was a billionaire, had a beautiful wife, had children, had houses all over the world. Everything in the material world that you could want or you think you want, he had. And when he got it all, he was miserable. He was unhappy. He could not believe that all of these things that he thought had happiness within them, that he would be okay when he got there, didn't exist. He was lost. He didn't know what to do. It was a moment of, if it's not out there, where is it? If what do I do? Thankfully he stumbled on an amazing coach, and this guy showed him the way, and he left these companies and built his own. I mean, he's still an amazingly successful guy, but what he realized, that he had to find it in him. It was never outside of him. Okay, and this is what we're pointing to. It's always in you. Whatever the face of it is showing isn't the truth. Yeah, so whatever it looks like isn't true. That's just how it looks. We look to the world and we think, oh yeah, that I'll be happy when, I'll be happy if. Oh, they are really happy, or they've got it going on, or we have no idea. Okay? And we don't need to know. All we need to do is explore for ourselves what the truth is. explore what's within us, then go play, then go live, then, whatever, do what you want to do. But do it from the knowing of who you are. That's richness. Do it from understanding that the trauma that you thought defined you was just passing. It just doesn't exist anymore. Take the gifts from it. Take whatever it's taught you, absolutely. But throw away the rest. You don't need it. We don't need to hold on to anything. It's the principles and the understanding of a process of shedding. It's another name for it is subtractive psychology. We're shedding what's not true. So you are not your past. You are not the future. You are not even your thoughts. You are something more. Explore that. Who are you? Wow, I've been talking for a while. I'd like to have a little chat with tonight's co-host, Sir Soul, if you're available.
Hello there,
Hello,
Molls.
darling. How are you?
Oh, I'm great. Thank you. I'm glad everybody's here. So I was just like scribbling. It's always a pleasure listening to you because as I'm listening, I'm having thoughts about my own experience pertaining to what you're saying. And who are you? You also said when you see who you are, you'll see the world differently. And in my own experience, like recently, for example, I felt like larger and more than I've ever felt in my life, and that was directly because of a shift in my thinking, right? And previously, you don't realize it whenever you're in that state of mind, but I felt so small, and like you were saying, you tend to hold on to that for some reason. You create your own box, and I know a Twitter post you made recently. You were talking about, or we were both speaking about being limitless. You are resilient. You are infinite, and you're the only thing in your life that's creating the box around you. So something else that you had said, your mind tends to hold on to this trauma, and that's something interesting because it doesn't feel nice, right? So why do we hold on to it? I think something to keep in mind is that whatever you're feeling is okay. It's normal. And traumatic emotion is very deep. And again, our mind holds onto it. I believe what you said is your mind grips it. But again, if you're a repeat listener, if you've been here over the weeks, then you know that everything is temporary. The past only exists within your mind. Change is the only constant that we have within this life. And so I guess the first question that I had that came up is, Molls, what do you think it is about the emotion that we feel from trauma that causes us to hold on to it? What is it? Why do we hold on to something that doesn't feel good?
Thank you for speaking. Yeah, that's a great question. I think we partly hold on because we don't understand the system. I think there's a big thing there of when we don't understand thought and we think the content is real, there's something in us that, the mind loves a repeat movie. It loves to play the same thing over and over. I don't know why that is. That's just something, that's just the nature of the mind.
Something that's familiar, maybe.
Yeah, maybe something that's familiar, just something that it seems to loop on. Um, so I guess I've got two answers there. One is that we don't understand the system, and when we do, then it's not that we know how to let it go. It's just that a letting go happens. It's like when we understand the principles, when we see it's thought and it's not truth, again, that logic comes in. It doesn't make sense to hold on to it anymore. The other thing is that maybe those traumas that we held on to that took us into the descent of darkness and madness were our lessons, were meant to be part of our experience. Sometimes I wonder about that. I was 7 years in quite a bad place, and now I look back on that and I see it as, yes, it was thought, it was created by thought, but it was something that maybe I needed 7 years of that experience to come out of it and have this amazing experience of life and an understanding of the mind that I can teach. And maybe that was what had to happen for me. Maybe that was just how, clearly that was how it was meant to be. And that was how long I was supposed to experience it. So for me, it's always a teacher. That would probably be my ultimate answer. Yeah, it appears as if we hold on and it goes round and round. And, when we understand the system, we can let it go. But for me, I guess those times where we have held on and we have descended into darkness and turmoil is that life was showing us. That was our personal experience. That was our school, our school of life. So I don't know how that sits with you. What would you say to that?
I think you're on the right track. Something that came to mind was whenever we're feeling down or we feel as if something is being done to us or happening to us, we can often feel like a victim. And I think that is again, it's okay and it's normal to feel what you're feeling, but again, you can't hold on to it. You need to let it sure sit with you and dwell on it, but don't make it a habitual thing. Do you think that it could be an issue of again having that victim mindset and not taking responsibility for yourself?
I do think that there is an element of that in it. But again, do we need to be a victim to see that we're not? The duality of life. But absolutely, I know through my work there's some people that come into it and they may not stick around because it's very, very hard for them to take full responsibility for everything that's ever happened to them. And that's kind of a commitment and a requirement of this work, is you have to say, okay, I'm going to take responsibility for my life. I'm going to take responsibility for these things that happened to me and see that they were coming from me. And that can be a tough thing to do. And for me, it's the brave souls that stick around. It's the ones that are willing to look at themselves, and that isn't always easy. And I have complete empathy for anybody that finds that difficult, because you're absolutely right. Being a victim is easier. Saying, okay, I'm holding my hands up, I'm taking full responsibility, is like, wow. But actually, what's so interesting is how empowering it is to take full responsibility, to see your resilience, to understand who you are, to take responsibility for that is power. It's like, okay, this is my life. It's coming from me. There's something deeper at work here. I'm going to explore that, and I'm going to allow life to live through me, and I'm going to accept that part of life is painful experiences, and I will go through these painful experiences as gracefully as I can. And when they're done, I will try not to hold on to them, because it doesn't make sense to do that anymore. Because the symptoms that we get from these traumas, as in the anxieties, the panic attacks, the PTSD, the depression, the disassociation, whatever flavour of feeling that comes to you afterwards, that look like they're coming from the disorder, that look like they're coming from the past, are actually signals that are telling you that the mind is going in the wrong direction, that you really need to challenge your thinking, not believe it. So again, it's like, instead of believing the thinking, it's challenging it. It's saying, is this true? Because what trauma can do is transcend us if we see it clearly. The trauma and the loss can be transcendent experiences when we insightfully understand them. When we don't understand them, we play the loop and the victim, and we get caught and we get lost. Okay, but what's always true, and this is interesting, what is always true, whether we are doing the thing where we're the victim and we're lost, or whether we're doing the thing where we're taking the responsibility and we're seeing its thought, all of that is still created by the principles. All of that is still the same energy at work. It's just how we're seeing it is differently. It's just our experience of it is different, because every experience ultimately comes from the principles. Okay, it's really important. It's not, the principles haven't gone wrong when somebody's stuck in trauma and being a victim. It's just the person hasn't seen them to be true. So again, it's not a toolkit. It's not a method. It's the truth of the human experience. Okay, is that helpful?
Oh, absolutely. I think you always nail it, Molls.
Ah, thank you, darling. Okay, it's been I can see Gem. I don't know if she's actually listening or not, but just want to tell you that I love you, and I'm sorry for what you've been through today, and I look forward to you being back next week. Yeah, I wonder, has anybody else got anything that they'd like to say, or would like to come up and ask any questions before we finish? You're quiet lot.
As if anybody's taking some time, think of some questions. I did have something. I wasn't here last week, but I had something I wanted to share while people are thinking about questions.
Perfect.
In my own life, we have this idea of what we dream about, or what we think. We have this idea of what our perfect life would be like, and in my own life, last year I had some goals that I wanted to meet, and it just wasn't meant to be, and so I was sitting here and thinking, okay, well, what am I going to do now? I had to kind of refocus, and then, but it's also much like the three principles. You look at where you are right now. You don't think about where you want to be, or where you were, or where are you right now. And for myself, looking at the goals I had, where I am right now, a lot of those goals were already met, but for some reason in my mind, I had this idea that I needed to be somewhere else in order to complete those. And so it was like I describe it as an epiphany, because everything that I wanted somewhere else, I'm completely capable of doing right here, right now. And it was a really empowering moment for me, because I was putting so much off, because I thought I needed to be somewhere else in order to do those things. And in reality, I mean, I'm completely capable of doing those things right where I am. And in all actuality, it'll turn out being stronger than what it would have been if I would have pursued this ideal vision of what I had wanted, right? It was just clear to me that what I wanted was not what was best for me. I might have thought that, oh, it would be greater than what I have, but again, it isn't what you want. It isn't what you had. Where are you right now? I don't know if any of that made sense, but
No, no,
it was just a strong moment for me. Like,
yeah,
I don't need to wait around for what I want. I can do it now.
yeah. That's amazing. It's like that's so true for everything, for all of us. It's like there's some imaginary place or some imaginary moment, and it doesn't exist. There is just this moment. And I love that you've said that what an insight. It's like, wow, what am I doing? There isn't, I don't have to be anywhere else to do anything. I can do what I need to do right here, right now. Yeah, I think that's powerful. I like that. And there's a couple of things that I've heard lately and that are really fitting. And one is what you think you want isn't what you want. And I love that because that's really powerful. It's because it's often so true that we get what we want and we're like, oh, okay. Is that it?
It was so much easier than I thought it would have been.
Yeah. Um, and doubt your doubt, not your commitments. I love that. It's that's been really powerful for me to see is doubt my doubts. It's what I'm committed to, what I want to do. Yeah, I'm going to do it. I'm committed to this. I'm committed to unminding. I'm going to be here every week that I can be here and share with you guys and carry on with this and see where this project takes me. I'm committed to my family. But, it's so easy to have doubt. Doubt is just thought. But, that's what we want to doubt our doubts. I was like, wow, that's a really great way of looking at it. And that can just allow us to focus and not defer the things that we think we need to defer to another moment. It's like just get on with it. Just do life. It's we the truth of who we are is absolutely miraculous. Like if you stop for a moment and actually are in awe of the fact that we're having this human experience, like we're here, we're breathing, we're feeling, we're loving, we're experiencing, we're tasting. It's like just that is a miracle. It's amazing, but we want to add so much. We want to. It's like nothing's ever enough. But if we can just stop, if we can just be present, if we can just be still and see who we are, if we can see the experience that we're having, if we can really see where that experience is coming from, the totality and the depths of our experience, the fact of this infinite intelligence taking form as us in this moment. It's like, wow. Why are we trying to add so much? That doesn't mean to say we don't go and experience life. We don't throw ourselves into life and have the most amazing life and do things and have fun. But to do it from the base of seeing that life's actually a miracle at its very core is gonna really allow the richness of that experience to explore something like the three principles that we're teaching here and see that we're experiencing life from us and that this healing can come in, that these traumas can fall away, that we can be free, that we can have a different experience of life, of ourselves, of our minds, then again it's like that beauty, that power that comes through us. Like to know who we are is everything. To see through the illusions of the mind allows us to be present, allows us to, yes, we're still going to get caught up, but we're going to be caught up much less. And to be caught up much less is so beneficial for us. It gives us clarity, it gives us space. It allows us to see so much more clearly than before we understood. When we thought was true, when we thought it was real, when we thought that we were creating it, that it was personal. Suddenly we see the impersonal nature, and we see the perfectly imperfect beings that we are. We see who we are. We see who other people are. You know, we turn our pain into beauty. We take the gifts from the moment. Yeah, it's kind of amazing to have these glimpses, and I think that's what they are. I think that's what we're lucky enough to have when we do this work, is these glimpses of truth, these glimpses that, and it's in those little glimpses where we see something for ourselves that the illusion falls away, that something more beautiful comes through, that the conceptual mind calms down, and we just get to be present. We just get to experience life in a different way, and all the good and all the bad and all the beauty and all the sorrow, all the things that come with that. And we know that that's what we're here to have, that our experience is meant for us, is made for us, and we get to live. That's really living. To not be scared of experience is life at its fullest. And
I
that's
think
what I wish. That's what I wish for everybody, is that we get to see it and we get to live. Sorry, Cecile.
no, I'm sorry I interrupted. Seeing those glimpses, that's it's almost a skill you develop in itself. Um, I can only speak from my own experience,
Okay.
but um, you
I
kind of
yeah.
you
Sorry.
kind of train you kind of train that in a way. I don't know how everyone else feels about that, but it you don't become invulnerable. Just like you mentioned your recent trauma with your burns. Um, you fall into it, but you catch yourself and you see it for what it is. And
Yeah.
I think that you're able to pull yourself out of it easier. It isn't that you don't feel it, but you you realize what you're within, I guess.
I would say yes, but also no. Okay. Yes, it looks that way, but I would say no in the sense of that there isn't a you that's doing that. There's an understanding. The fact that you have grounded yourself, the fact that you have explored this deeper sense of who you are, and you've opened up to that, allows that to come through. So that wisdom is there, and that comes through, is accessible. But the you actually doing it, the practice, to me doesn't make sense, because it's not a doing, it's a being. So it's like your state of being has expanded enough for that, in those moments where you get caught, you get uncaught, because you're grounded, you have an understanding, you have a knowing. Okay, it's not an intellectual thing. It's deeper than that. Now the intellect wants to own it, and that's what happens. The intellect says, "Well, you're doing that. Your habits, your practices, means that you are doing that thing." But it isn't that. It's the knowing that you have expanded into. Your being has expanded, and that beingness is what comes through.
You're right. Yeah, you're right. It isn't
Yeah,
a doing, it's a being.
yeah. Yeah, and that's powerful. Like the being is the powerful bit. The being is the, like, if you do what you do from your being, you will have a different experience than if you do it from believing it's coming from your intellect.
And
Being
again,
is where it's at.
yeah, you don't have to do anything. You always say
No.
that. You don't have to do anything.
Yeah. Yeah. Just have the conversations. Let it percolate through you. Let it settle. See what you see. You know, listen more. Have other conversations. That's it. There's no exercises. There's no doing. There's just this state of being. And that state of being is what will guide you through life. That state of being will give you the richness of life. That being is like the source. It's, yeah, who, like, always check in with yourself. Who am I being? You know, who am I being? Not what am I doing? Who am I being? Am I being love? Am I being kindness? Am I being generosity? You know, who am I being? So important. Not what you're
And
doing. That's nothing. It's the beingness.
I know for myself, whenever, again, it's not a doing, it is a being. So whenever I'm within that, I know I feel, again, it's my intellect trying to take, like you just said, it's my intellect trying to take credit for it. But that beingness, that being centered and grounded, you feel much larger than whenever you're within that trauma body. You know, you feel
Mm.
really small and like you can feel helpless and incapable. And of course that isn't the truth. It's just how your thinking is telling you, you know.
Yeah, it's a temporary illusion, but you have to realize it's a temporary illusion for it to fall away. You know, it's, you know, I'm not discounting in any way the how real trauma can feel, how those feelings can take you over and scare you, and you know, your world becomes smaller, your life becomes smaller. You can't, you know, you shut yourself away, you close yourself off, you go into a protective mode. And it sucks to be in that space, but again, there's so much learning that can happen from that space. And then once you see who you are, see, what I love about this is this isn't time-based healing. Okay, so what I mean with that is that it doesn't matter how long you've lived with PTSD or trauma, the moment that you see the truth of what I'm talking about, it will fall away. Yeah, it's not, oh, it's going to take 2 years, 3 months for you to be clear of that trauma because you've had it for 23 years. That isn't true. It's insight is instant. Truth doesn't have a timeline. So for me, it was like 7 years, and that moment of awakening was huge. And I saw what I saw. I saw all of my experience had come from thought, and from that, it was like a glimpse into the divine nature of the human experience and the energy behind life, and everything changed. Like it's so quickly. And it was I went from living this small world, from being incredibly protective of myself, to feeling vulnerable, all of those things, to having this huge insight via the principles and seeing that life was for living and that I was going to live it. And that's huge. You know, if you knew me then, you would have known how huge that was, from how I was to how much I changed. You know, I changed so much. I mean, I've changed so much. I'm now teaching it. You know, I can get on calls and I can teach and I can go anywhere and I can do anything. And that wasn't my life when I lived in my world of negative thinking, of trauma, of darkness, of depression, of anxiety. That this life I have now, what didn't even look like a possibility. Didn't even look like that could possibly happen, and it did. So I'm living proof of the power of these principles, as is the many, many people that I've taught them to, as is Gem. You know, it's life. You get life back. And again, this is what's on offer. This is why we share. This is why we do what we do. Yeah, it's powerful stuff. You know, you're putting your finger in the mains with the principles. You know, you're bypassing a lot of bullshit. This isn't self-help. This isn't any of those things. This is directly to the source of experience. So it's like put your finger in. No, don't literally put your finger in the mains, but put your finger in the metaphorical mains of the three principles, and see what happens. Like explore this. You know, I know some of you are on the call I'm working with or I've spoken with, and I know you're doing that. But if this is new to you, just go online, check it out, see what it's about, watch some more stuff, look at our other episodes. You've heard it for a reason, so go in that direction and just with an openness, see what happens, see what you see what you hear. Who knows? It could be life changing. So I think we're going to come to the end because my voice is starting to go. We haven't had Gem to do all the housekeeping, so I've probably forgotten everything, but I would like to thank you all for being here. Really appreciate everyone showing up. Just to share this with one person is amazing. To share it with so many of you is even more amazing. As I said, stay in the conversation. Thank you to everybody that does donate, has donated, has helped us in any way. We have our website now, so please go and check out the www.theunmindingproject.com. If you want to check me out, I'm www.samanthahurst.me. So there's some resources out there for you to go and have a look at. Just get in touch if you need any help. I think that's kind of all I can remember about housekeeping. As I said, I've probably missed out a lot. And thank you, Sir Soul, for stepping in tonight. I really, really appreciate your help.
It's not a problem.
Thank you, darling. Thank you so much. Thank you to everybody again. Thank you, everyone that comes on. And
Thank you.
Thank you. As always, please reach out in DMs or got our Telegram group. If you do need help, please reach out. And we'll be back next week with another topic. And Jem will be back, and we'll see where it goes. And I'm committed to this project. I hope that some of you guys also have some commitment to it, and we'll see you next week, and we'll just see where this takes us. Big love to everybody. Thank you, guys. I'm going to play out with our music.